Jackie Fletcher is a health coach getting her business up and off the ground, and she decided to double down on content creation by starting a podcast. She's interviewed quite a few big names in the ketogenic space and is having a ton of fun and a lot of success in the podcasting world. Trouble is, though, it's distracted her a tiny bit from the business of kicking off her health coaching practice. Laura and I dig into Jackie's plan for her health coaching biz and offer her some actionable coaching tips to get things moving. Check it out. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Jackie Fletcher, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, we're thrilled. We were just talking before we hit record why we're happy to talk to you, because you are the quintessential example of how people start out in health coaching. And for once, we're not talking to these people that are making $5 million and feeling unapproachable to a lot of our listeners. You are an example of a person getting started in health coaching and putting on your big girl pants and just putting yourself out there. So I'm really just excited to hear you tell your story, and then we can dig into all the things that you're doing to launch yourself. Let's hear it.
So my story is around weight, really. And it goes back to being a child, where when you look back, I probably wasn't overweight, but I felt overweight compared to everyone else in primary school. And I felt like I stuck out, and I was always the last one to be picked for the sports teams and all things like that kids go through. And now I just wish, when I see a picture of me of when I was 9, I just want to say, oh, you're beautiful, you're lovely. But I didn't feel that at the time. So around about the age of 12 is when I started dieting. And I went with my great aunt to Weight Watchers. And that started me on this dieting roller coaster, if you like. I wasn't as bad as some people. I know some people do it all their lives. I sort of gave up along the way. And the other thing was my granddad, some people might relate to this. They're probably a bit too young, most of the listeners. But my granddad's nickname was Cannon, after the 70s detective Cannon, who was big. So my granddad was massive. My dad wasn't quite as big, but he was big. So I always grew up with this thought of, I'm going to be overweight like they are. So I don't know if that was a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. So anyway, I started on Weight Watchers, and then I'd last for a couple of weeks, and then I'd do something else. And, so the weekend comes around and you think, I'll just stop for the weekend and I'll go back on Monday, but you never quite do. And constantly gained weight. And when I was about 17 and a half, or in my 17 year, I had a lot of problems around my period, with pains coming on. And I went to various doctors, and they were just saying, oh, it's a kidney infection, it's a urine infection, it's this. Until eventually my grandma took me to her general practice doctor, who said, you need to go and have a scan and see what's going on. And I didn't know at the time, but I had a tumour the size of a British soccer ball. And so that was causing the pain. So when the period comes around and everything was swelling up, it was pushing on some of the tubes, and that was causing the pain. So that's why it would come and it would go. Anyway, just before my 18th birthday, I had it removed. Luckily, it was benign. But what that did, they took out my ovary. They took out 1.5 ovaries, the tumor, and my appendix, and that just sent my hormones into almost probably I don't know. Anyway, my hormones were completely out of sync, but I didn't know all this. So it was only much later I found out, and it was only when I came to 5 years ago that I started to understand that the removal of my ovaries completely affected my hormones. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I carried on with the dieting throughout my 20s until I got to around about my 30s and thought, diets don't work. I'm giving up. I don't want to do this anymore. So I just stopped dieting. But along with that, the weight kept accumulating over time. And in 2016, it was a very stressful year for me. There was a lot going on. I was working a lot at night. I was often doing 24-hour stints, and the weight just piled on even more. So I reached about just over 231 pounds. And I was listening to a podcast, and it was Gretchen Rubin. Somebody mentioned the book of Gretchen Rubin, Mastering Your Habit of Everyday Lives Better Than Before. That's back to front, but Better Than Before, Mastering Your Habits of Everyday Life. And in it, she spoke about how she'd read the book by Gary Taubes, and she'd changed what she'd done, and she'd lost a lot of weight, and so had her father. And I had no intention of going on diet because I can't do it. Diets don't work. I definitely bought into I didn't do it, but I bought into the eat less, move more paradigm. If you want to lose weight, you eat less and you move more. But every night I'd go to bed and I'd say, tomorrow's going to be different. Tomorrow I'm going to eat less and I'm going to move more. But I'd wake up the next day and nothing had changed. I didn't eat less and I didn't want to move more. So had all that stuff going on. But along with that was lack of motivation, lack of self-belief. I can't do this. I've got no willpower. All those thoughts were going on with me. But then I listened to Gary Taubes, and it just sort of made sense and it fell into place. And so I just cut out the wheat. I cut out, I didn't even cut out sugar. I cut out the wheat, cut out potatoes, and I cut out pasta. So along with the wheat went the cookies and the cakes and things like that. I was still having my chocolate. Instead of potatoes, I was having an extra vegetable. And very slowly, the weight started to come down. And then around the beginning of 2018, I read a book around keto and sort of took it another step further. So since May 2017, I've been low carb. I'm mostly keto, not all the time. I definitely don't, I will come off plan for holidays and things like that. But for the most part, I would say I'm keto. And that's led me to where I am today. So around 2019-ish, I started a blog, probably about 2018, 2019, just chronicling my, what was going on for me. A bit like you said you did, Laura, in the beginning. And then I wanted to do a podcast. I was listening to all these podcasts and it just felt great to do a podcast. Wouldn't that be good to speak to all these famous people? And so I was thinking about it a lot, but not actually doing anything. And then I met my now co-host, Louise, who I'd heard on a podcast, and we went for coffee and I'd tell her all my ideas about doing a podcast. And she said, yeah, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. So she was the prompt to get me going to do it. And then in 2020, I started doing some coaching. I did the primal health coaching, and I've done the nutrition network coaching as well. So that's where we are today.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So first of all, like every health coach we ever speak to has this story of their health journey. Love hearing those. I think it's interesting. You name drop Gary Taubes, who's kind of a polarizing character, but just because so much of your story I just resonated so much with. He has this line. I had to Google it as you were talking. He has this line. He in an article that he wrote, and it says, "Asking people to eat less is like asking them to breathe less. It sounds reasonable so long as you don't expect them to keep it up for very long."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love that. We're not going to out willpower our biology. It's just not going to happen. So I'm with you on that. So here's where we're at today. So you had this health journey. Kind of the tail end of the story is I'm dabbling in health coaching, but before you even did that, you wanted to start creating content to share your story. So started with a blog, then you kind of got keyed up to the idea of having a podcast. why I really like this story from the perspective of like training and coaching and developing health coaches is because we all have a story. And that's the obvious place to start with this. In fact, when we teach business development in our course, the first thing we have people do is write your story and then just tell it everywhere and just keep telling it because it's literally going to resonate with all the people it needs to resonate with.
Yeah.
So I think this will be an interesting conversation, kind of to springboard off Laura's intro, which is we're talking to a health coach who's not really, really, really established yet, but is on the way. And right now you're doubling down on creating content. So let's dive into this. So are you still blogging or have you abandoned the blog and now you're doubling down on this podcast?
So I stopped blogging. If anybody goes to my website, it's really, really rubbish. But I have written 2 blog posts and my goal was to do 1 a month, but I haven't quite kept it. That was starting last month and this month I haven't quite done it. But, you know, it's a work in progress. It's coming along.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I think that the takeaway message there is it's all good. Don't worry. I don't want people to ever get stressed out. We don't need to stress ourselves out about this. Okay, so you had a goal to do 1 blog post a month and we're at the end of the month and it hasn't quite happened yet. That's okay. You're still doing other things, right? So you're in podcast mode. So the podcast, it's a keto podcast specifically, or what do you guys typically cover?
It's much wider ranging than that. So we mostly interview guests. Every 3 months, Louise and I do an Ask Me Anything, or it quite often turns out into just Louise and I chatting about a topic. Mm-hmm. But mostly we're interviewing guests and they range from ancestral. So Laura came on as an ancestral to real food, to low carb, to keto, to carnivore, to fasting. So the whole spectrum of, you know, if somebody falls into that category that resonates with us, we will interview them. So some people approach us, can they be interviewed? And quite often it's just people that we meet or we've heard, or, you know, I reach out to all sorts of people.
Yeah. One thing that we found, I don't know, as we've been on the air now for 4 years, there's just no shortage of guests. Like we've never run out. So that's a good thing.
We're in November, the end of October as we're recording, and we have guests lined up, mostly recorded until the beginning of March.
Amazing. Wow. Well, let's go back to the very beginning. So you kind of got this wild and crazy idea because you love listening to podcasts. You wanted to start one. So what was the first thing you did? How do you start a podcast?
So the first thing I did was spoke to a colleague of mine who runs a podcast, and said, what do I do? How do I do it? So she talked me through Audacity and recording on Audacity. Then my first guest said, why don't you record on Zoom? So we started recording on Zoom. Then she taught me how to edit it. I also got some information from another keto podcast host, Daisy Brackenhall. So I was talking to her and we just went for it. And in the beginning, it still is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It takes up a couple of days of my time. But in the beginning, I was doing everything. And then after about 3 months, something like that, I got 2 virtual assistants. So one goes through the podcast and she does the first edit for me. And so when I do the second edit, a lot of the noise has been taken out, some of the gaps. Sometimes she misses things, but then I play around with it and do it all. And she puts it all together. So she creates the actual podcast and she uploads it to the website. And then I have another VA who does, so we write the social media posts, but she programs them in. She creates the photos. We take quotes and make photos. So she does all that. So I have 2 VAs that are doing some of the work for me. But that just came with time. I had to do it myself first so that I could tell them what to do, because they're in the Philippines and they need to be told really specifically, do this, do that, do the other. And then they get the hang of it and it's fine. But I had to do it myself first to find out how to outsource it.
Yeah, that's so important. Erin and I talk a lot about how important it is for you to have some working knowledge of every aspect of your business, and this is why starting a business is so hard, is because we're all trying to learn new skills that we've never had before. And sometimes we're doing it ourselves because we just can't afford to pay someone else to do it just yet. But Erin and I have said before on the podcast how I don't know, I guess just how important it is for you to learn how to do that stuff. Doesn't mean you have to do it forever. But to your point, how do you know how to tell someone else to do it, or how you want it to actually turn out until you've actually done it yourself? So there's a lot about starting any business from the ground up that you're doing on your own. And it's important, I think, for you to go through that exercise. That I do think resiliency and strength and confidence comes from the struggle of having gotten there.
Yeah. But also, when you've got to tell someone the steps, you have to know the steps. And then once you've done it a few times, so then I would just press record on my, screenshot my computer and say, I do this, and then I do that, and then do this. And so the steps. And then I just created a video, which they then followed.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is how you write a health coaching program, right? You know the steps that you went through to go from, whether it was having to lose a lot of weight or some sort of illness or disease or unwellness and moving towards wellness. You know what steps that you went through. You know what it is you needed to hear when, what pieces of information clicked for you when, that you can then kind of retrace your steps and go into building the structure of your own sort of coaching program. And I love the fact that what really flipped the switch for you in the beginning was a podcast that you listened to, right? And it doesn't surprise me at all that you're drawn to wanting to get out and podcast and talk to some really interesting people. It's part of my favorite thing about doing this, right, Erin, is all the really cool people that we've spoken to, which I love. And you've interviewed some pretty big people in the kind of low carb keto realm.
Yeah.
Tell me about what that's like. Go ahead.
Gary Taubes didn't reply to my invitation.
Oh.
Man, he might be that kind of person you have to hit up a couple of times. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get his own emails, and that, there's going to have to be something really interesting to kind of get through to that guy. But you've had Jennifer Unwin on, you've had Dr. Tro on, you've had Nina Teicholz, right? How do you pronounce her last name?
Teicholz.
Yeah.
Oh, I say Teicholz, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, these are some pretty big people in this realm. So look, I would think when it comes to the podcast, the steps of knowing how to do it, that's already daunting. But the step of actually reaching out to someone and saying, someone that you admire, and you're like, they don't know me. Like, how am I going to get this person? So what's that process like for you? What was the first one? Were you nervous? Was there anyone you were nervous to reach out to? How did you overcome that? What does your request process look like?
Okay. So
sorry. Like 3 or 4 questions.
Yeah. So in the beginning, so what happened was in the May 2019, I went to, have you heard of the Public Health Collaboration? Maybe not. It's a UK charity, and they're promoting public health mostly through real food. And they have a conference, or they were having a conference every year. And I went to the 2019 conference. And of course, a lot of these people were here. Some were on the stage. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Peter Bruckner, Dr. Robert Lustig.
Yep.
And so I just went up to them and said, hey, I'm starting a podcast. Would you like to come on? And, they all say yes, of course. But then you have to email and follow up. But it took time from that May to when we were starting to record, which was about 6 months. So, of course, some of them fell away and didn't get back in contact with me. But I did get a few people come on. And that's how it just started. And I just kept reaching out and sending emails. And then what we do is when we interview people, we say, is there anyone you would recommend that we interview? And so then we'd reach out to them and I say, so-and-so has recommended you come on the podcast. Would you like to come on? And with time, it just grows. And so we've got, as I said before, we've got a long list of people waiting to come out. And that's because this year I went back to the PHC conference and met lots of cool people. Some of them people that you might have heard of, and then others just general people like myself who have a great story. One lady we interviewed, I was just talking to a keto festival, and she told me she'd lost 12 stone, which is oh gosh, something like 180 pounds.
Oh
No,
wow.
stone is 14 pounds, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang.
Well, you look it up while I carry on talking. Just doing low carb, and she'd lost, what is it?
112 pounds. If it's 14 times 8.
No,
Lost 12
14
stone.
times 12.
Oh, 14 times 12. Wow.
You got to get this number.
Yeah, it's
Right. 168 pounds.
168 pounds. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's when I meet people that have an amazing story, you know, not everybody on our show is famous. A lot of people are just normal people that just have a story to tell. Some of it's around health, some of it's around weight. And it's just saying, would you like to come and share your story with us?
Mm-hmm.
And most people say yes.
They do. Honestly, that's true. Cool. So what I like about this generally is that, first of all, there's just something, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just, there's a certain tenacity involved in starting anything. So right out the gate, whatever, if you're going to start anything, I use the example of like, okay, the woman who won the barrel racing at the Calgary Stampede 5 years ago was 68 years old. If I started now, I could potentially win the barrel racing at the Calgary Stampede when I'm 68 years old, right? But to start barrel racing would take a lot of tenacity. Barrel racing is a weird example. Starting a podcast, starting a health coaching business, starting anything, it stutters at first. And that's usually when people say, this isn't working. But what I like about what you're saying here is that you started and you kept going and you showed this tenacity. And then what happens is inevitably some momentum is built, right? So now you have a consistent guest roster. So it's kind of rolling on its own. But it was because you persevered in the early days. And I think this is really crucial for content development, content marketing. So whether this is going to be a blog or a podcast or a YouTube channel or your Instagram feed or whatever it is, there's zero traction at first. Nobody's listening, nobody's watching, there's nobody out there, but you just have to keep going. And then once you do, it picks up speed. So this is just an acknowledgement, recognition of the fact that you boldly did it. But let's talk about, so you're still creating this content, this awesome podcast that people famous and non-famous go on. And let's talk real. Has this translated into clients for you?
To be honest, I've had one client and a couple of discovery calls. So I have had discovery calls. Now, I think my probably lack of experience of converting those discovery calls might be the reason, but also some of these people just didn't have the money to pay, which is, there's a whole another thing. And I know you say that people will find the money, but, sometimes they just don't, or they don't want to, whatever it is. So I think, that's down to my lack of experience. But yes, I've had some inquiries and over the time. So yes.
Cool. Okay. So that's really cool. So first of all, just as a sidebar, I'm not super of the opinion that everybody can find the money.
Right.
Sometimes people can't afford it, and that's okay. It's like they're just not ready right now. Like not being ready could be a financial thing or whatever. So these folks that you've had these discovery calls with, and the client you have had, did they come from the podcast? Were they listening to you, and that's how they found you typically? Yeah.
Yeah, because a couple of them are. So one of them was in America. The other one is in America, but it's for her sister who was here on an army base or Air Force base in the UK. So she'd told her sister about it. The other one was the lady that I spoke about that had lost 12 stone. This was a friend of hers who had listened and approached me. So yeah, they're definitely coming from the podcast because I haven't come across them in any other space.
Okay, cool. So just to kind of close the loop on this line of questioning, This is why we teach people to tell their story first, get really clear on it, but then just keep telling it, put content out, even though maybe at first nobody's listening, because then when people do find you, there's a clear point of view. They'll know what you do, what you're about. And so the question we always get asked as health coaching educators is, okay, I want to be a health coach, but where do I find clients? We must get asked that question 10 times a day, to be really honest with you. And the answer is they're going to find you. That's literally how the realm of consumers works in this day and age. So when they do find you, what are they going to see? That's the question we all need to be answering. When they do find you, what are they going to see? So this, again, just circle back, is why we want you to everybody to double down on creating content, even if nobody's looking at first, because when they do find you, then they'll see what your point of view is all about.
Yeah. Leveraging the podcast episodes that you do have on your website, just listed under media, right? You have a media tab and all the episodes you have. You had some pretty high profile people that you've already interviewed, which I think is great. It sounds to me like where you're struggling a little bit is how to translate all this, how to capture those that are listening so that it can translate into clients. So this is where it's something as simple as having some sort of lead magnet that you give away to people that are listening to the podcast. All you need to do is go to my website, enter your name and email address, and you're going to get, whatever that is. Have you put something like that into place, or can we brainstorm around this stuff?
Yeah, so I have a download some food lists, not very interesting, but then you need the follow-up emails, and that's where I fall down. So I've got a few follow-up emails, but I need to do some work on that.
When you have a new podcast episode, how are you putting that out there? Where do you advertise that?
So it comes out every week on a Thursday. So
inside your podcast player, you just see it there. Yeah.
So to date, we haven't missed a week, and we're up to today was 111 that went out. So we've already passed our second anniversary. So that was the beginning of the month. So I've been doing it for 2 years. Then we post, and this is where I fall down, is because I'm not very good at social media and it takes a lot of time. So we just tend to broadcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we just set up posts that go out most days, not every day on LinkedIn, but most days on Facebook, most days on Instagram, most days on Twitter. Podcasts go out and we advertise the current guest, plus we pick out some of the old ones as well.
Nice. Okay, great. Yeah. And so then if you're building an email list, so these folks are downloading your lead magnet, they're getting into your email list, and you're saying, then I have this sort of email sequence that is it's kind of there. I'm not really nailing it. I think a lot of people struggle with that, to be honest with you. I don't know how to nurture this person through an email sequence / I don't really want to. Some people don't want to. I don't want to be honest with you. I'm going to be very unpopular here. I don't want to have a set nurturing sequence. You know what I mean? I actually want to write an email to my email list when I'm in the mood. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Hey, I was thinking about this, or I saw this thing, or I watched this documentary. I want to be more organic. So now you have this weekly published podcast,
and we do a weekly newsletter, which again is not really pushing the business. So what we do is I write what's going on in my week, Louise writes what's going on in her week, then we do a bit about the podcast, the last 4 episodes, and then at the bottom I might write something which might be, come and join our Facebook group, or it might be buy the Fabulously Keto Journal, or it might be do a metabolic health test. There's all sorts of things, but it's not really business focused. It's more to tell people about what's going on for us. So it's not great, but it's consistent. Again, we haven't missed a week in 2 years. So the weekly newsletter goes out as well.
Great. That's good consistency. And then we have this whole give, ask sort of paradigm, which is at some point, maybe there would be a fully transactional message that would go out once in a while, right? Yeah. We don't want that to feel slimy or anything, but you're giving all this information in a weekly newsletter and a beautiful weekly podcast and you have all these cool resources. And then the hard part is then asking and selling yourself. But my business coaches said to me, for example, we did this. I went to a workshop with my business coaches last week in the LA area, and we had to, we sat in, this is a kind of a cool exercise. We sat in a small group, and the strangers that we were working with had to pull up our Instagram feed. So they all pulled up my Instagram feed, and within 1 minute, they had to know exactly what I do and how I work with people, how much it costs, how they get started, everything like that. If they couldn't figure that out within 1 minute of looking at my Instagram feed, then I screwed up. I need to be talking about, here's all the ways you can work with me. Here's how to do it. Here's the button you click. Here's how it goes. Like that needs to be at some point, at some recent point in recent history, we have to have shared, by the way, you can work with me and here's how. We literally have to do it. It's a disservice if we don't.
Yeah, that's where I fall down.
Well, the thing is I think this is where so many people fall down. So so my role, as you know, at our school is helping people understand kind of, what health coaching is. So I'm the admissions director. It's my job to help people figure out if health coaching is for them. And is this really the realm they want to go in? And are we the right fit? And this happens all the time, is this reluctance to, first of all, talk about yourself. You don't have that problem. It's, hey, this was what's going on with me this week. So that's great. But the other is anything that comes across as salesy, or that in their mind is that someone will perceive as salesy, right? And so it's having a little bit of this mindset switch. So first of all, it is important to talk about yourself and what's going on with you. But here's what I think might be helpful in terms of what's going on with Jackie this week is having some sort of a what's the so what to that little news that has something actionable or a benefit or value to who's getting that newsletter, because we want them to keep opening it, right? So not just here's the episode, but this is what happened with me this week. This is what I learned. This is a recipe that I tried. This is a challenge I overcame, that can continue to provide value for that client. And then this is where, the other thing I want to pivot to, you built this beautiful journal. That is another great stop that you can kind of turn around and sell. And oh, by the way, when you enter into my 12-week program, you receive this journal, right? And you can start giving and sharing. So in terms of this this is where I fall down, let's kind of pull that apart a little bit. Where do you think that comes from? Is it that right now there's so many moving parts that you're not quite sure what you can let go of so that you have the time to do this? Or is this some sort of a block in terms of I'm afraid to sell? Like I can put myself out there as long as I'm giving, but I have a hard time asking.
There's a bit of that going on, definitely. But I have accumulated the knowledge that it's not sales, it's service. So I'm just offering a service to people. They can take it or they leave it. And so that's my way of getting through that. And then the other thing is the podcast does take up a lot of my time. So I have other things going on as well through my week. And then the podcast. So Monday and Tuesday nights, I'm usually up till 11:30. I'm tired. Then, there's other things going on. I do taekwondo. So I go to classes. I've got my black belt coming up.
Wow.
In next week. Yikes. So that is taking up a lot of time as well. So it is a time thing. And then I have this great long list of things I want to do in terms of promotional. I need to make my website a bit better. I need to write the blog. I need to create a sales page for the journal because it only just released 2 weeks ago. So there's all these things that are there to be done. And sometimes it's just where to start. What's the thing that will give me the most traction for the time I've got now, and not necessarily knowing what it is. So sort of high on my list at the moment is to create a sales page for the book. Now, anyone can go to Amazon and they can get the book, but I'd also like to have it on my website. And then, so then what gets in the way is actually writing the copy for the web page, and then designing it. Maybe the designing is not too much time, I could do that. But it's writing the copy in a way that's appealing, and all those sorts of things get in the way and cause stumbling blocks.
Yeah. Hey, it's Erin, co-host of Health Coach Radio. I've trained men and women of all different body types and skill levels, and take it from me, women are made for strength. They may just have a different way of getting there than men do. With the Primal Health Coach Institute's Strength Training for Women Specialist certification, you'll be able to address the needs, challenges, questions, and goals most relevant to women. You'll learn how to design a training program, and then you'll develop one. You'll also learn how to co-create individual eating strategies for clients and how to navigate potentially sensitive topics like menopause, reproductive cycles, hormone-related dysfunction, and diet culture. If you want to empower women to become fitter and stronger, then visit primalhealthcoach.com and learn more about our specialization in strength training for women. It's overwhelming. What I think is always so interesting is how this parallels, Laura mentioned this earlier, how this parallels what our health coaching clients go through. So it's so interesting because we're going to talk about your book here pretty quick, but you were kind of showing us some of the pages before we recorded. And one of the exercises you have folks do in this book is, okay, what's your big goal? Now break it down into small goals. Which is literally all you have to do to get your sales page written, right? Like you already know, it's like, I got to write the copy. I have to make the design. It's sort of like deciding the first step you're going to take, because overwhelm will stop us in our tracks completely. I think any kind of productivity, journaling, or like really pragmatic zooming out and looking at the big picture type of exercise is honestly the way forward, because we will become paralyzed with overwhelm. We think of everything we need to do. Yeah. Sounds to me like you've got your next step, which is writing the sales page copy. So like you could do that today, maybe. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And then you'd be on your way.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect the first time out. Just write.
Yeah.
Send it to Louise. Have Louise look at it. Or send it to Erin or I. We'll look at it and give you some talk, it's our 2 cents for whatever that means. But Louise is probably more, understands a little bit more about what you're trying to do with that. But, and get other people involved in some feedback. And then you can go back for round 2. Don't let perfection get in the way of the good. That's Mark Sisson's big mantra.
Do you know, if I can just share an anecdote. So I have a group program that I run a couple times a year. And so today is October 27th that we're recording this. This is going to come out much later, but today's October 27th. And I decided 2 days ago to launch another group program for November 1st. That's in 4 days. 5 days? 4 days, 5 days. And it's like, okay, it's out there. People are enrolling. I have to build the email sequence. I have to build the community page for them to land on. Like I have to build, like sometimes I hate this phrase, but sometimes it's that whole leap in the net will appear. I've gotten so much done by just putting myself on the burner. Like, people are signing up. I have to build the thing. And it's crazy to me how I can drag my heels on this stuff forever.
Yeah.
Like I would drag my heels on it probably infinitely, because I have a million other things to do as well. But then one day I had a wild hair, decided to do it. Now I've got to do it. And it's like, boom, let's go. I mean, you're a productive person. You're not an unproductive person. And sometimes the productive people, we're the ones that get overwhelmed by our own brains. Really.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, I think about, I've run my Primal 12-week program several times with 1-to-1. And now I'm thinking I should be doing that for a group. Yeah. We're coming into a time of, people don't know where their money's going to come from. They don't know where food's going to come from. We don't know if we're going to have electricity and all these things going on that they have, people are holding back to say, I don't want to spend any extra money at the moment. So maybe the 12-week 1-to-1 would be too much. Right. But I could offer a 12-week group program, but then it wouldn't be any different to me to run it as a group as to do it as a 1-to-1. There might be some different things going on, but it's like, how do I sell it? I need a sales page. Here we go with the sales page again. I need to get some people onto it. How do I do that? Because my email list is quite small, and a lot of it is podcast guests who probably don't want to do it because they've done the journey already. How am I going to reach out to people? Where am I going to send them? Like you said, email sequences, what am I going to do? So that stops me. But we're coming up to the new year. I don't know when this is going out, but like you said, it's October. We're coming up to the new year. That would be an ideal time to have a group program ready to hit the ground at the beginning of January.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do it. And it's like, come on, Jackie, you got to do it.
You got to do it.
You got to do it.
Point of view. Like, I think this, you have a really interesting idea, because the way you kind of set that up was people are, we're coming into a very strange time as a humanity,
yes,
where our money's not going as far. Groceries are astronomically expensive. We're lonelier than ever. It's weird. And so framing a group program, like I had one of the most successful group programs during the lockdown, because people were lonely and they were freaking out and they just wanted some kind of community and some sense. So like there's a way, like it's almost thinking through the talking points. Like why is, for example, a primal approach, which people think is often expensive, actually kind of an interesting way to proceed when the world's going crazy? Well, you can homestead, you could have your own meat, grow your own meat, or find a farmer to get your meat from. And if you're metabolically really healthy, you just eat less anyway, so your grocery bill goes down. And there's a lot of ways to kind of frame that, but you kind of have to get to people's, I hate this phrase, but their pain points. Like, what is sort of some of the collective struggles people are having? I think you've got your handle on quite a few. And so even in your podcast, I don't know how you feel about doing that. Do you have any sponsorship messages, or do you kind of keep kind of ads and sponsorship and like promotional messaging out of your podcast? Would you be open to sliding a little self promo in there?
Yeah, I can do that. The last couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the journal. Last week was the metabolic health testing that I do. So yeah, I don't mind doing that. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
But I sort of, it's like, where do I start? I think is where that's the part that stops me from taking the next step, is where do I start?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay. Well, I had this great idea. Okay. So my business coaches, no, I'm not going to coach, but I just like great ideas. I mean, so my business coaches had tasked me with creating a 5-day challenge. So this is supposed to be the lead magnet that opens up into my group program, right? You've seen that happen before. I get roped into those all the time. Join this free 5-day challenge. And at the end of the 5-day challenge, it's like, okay, now if you really want the goods. So the 5-day challenge has to solve a small problem for free, but then also emphasizes the remaining problem, which is what the group program solves, right? So they said, you got to build this 5-day challenge. I said, well, like what? What's it going to be? I don't know. And I was doing the whole like kind of petulant child, like, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't know what to make it. They said, write down 5 important things. Think 5 concepts that are important to you. So I was like, okay, protein, sleep, walking, circadian rhythm, and I don't know, electrolytes. Like, great. There's your 5-day challenge. 5 days to kick off, metabolic health, whatever. And every single day I just taught a lesson pertinent to those 5 topics that I literally listed off the top of my head in 10 seconds. So one day was the importance of low level movement, day 2 was the importance of protein, why you got to get to sleep. I just riffed on topics I love talking about anyway. And that was my 5-day challenge. And it starts to open people's eyes to some of the things that impact metabolism. And then they were curious enough to join the group program. So literally, when folks say they don't know where to start with content or making products or programs, it's like, yes, you do. You totally know where to start. It's just, you never put your feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds to me.
Sorry, I've got to do a 5-day challenge now.
There you go.
But you've got content and tons of it that can be repurposed. And now you've got a system down to produce more. You have a 12-week coaching program that you can already get people in. You have a journal, a 12-week journal that you can use as a tool, and you have all of these things in place. What you need to do now, Jackie, is start asking.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a landing page. You eventually do, but you don't have to have one to get started. If you've never done a group program before, You can do all of that on social media or just through your newsletter saying, this is what I'm offering. It's going to start on this day. It's going to be this amount of money through your newsletter, and just encourage people to email you back. You have an email that's easy to remember, Jackie@fabulouslyketo.com, and just get started. You can build the landing page later for like the next round, but get a good group program. I don't care if there's only 3 people in it. Right? It's, but get it under your belt. So now you know what it feels like to coach 3 people. You've got some testimonials for people that have taken your group program, but don't let these big, overwhelming things get in the way of the fact that you've already built you've a ton. You already have a program. You already have a website. You already have a book. You already have a podcast. Now you just need to start asking, because you have been giving for 2 years and you've had clients. I don't want people thinking it's not as, you've put several people through your 12-week program. You've only gotten a handful out of the podcast, and that's fine. But now you've got all of this amazing content that you can turn around and repurpose in other ways to, first of all, your own proof statement that I've talked to all these people, and all these people are willing to come on my podcast, and this is my story, and this is the 12-week program that I built. You've got everything you need. So my challenge to you is, it's not that you don't let all that other stuff get in the way. You've got everything you need. You just need to ask.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of talking. We're talking. We're excited for you, Jackie. That's why we're.
But I'm sure there's lots of other people out there like me that are in this same position, that are listening to the show and thinking, that's making sense. That, I could do that. Don't need a landing page. Great. Let's do something. So, yeah.
You just need a way for people to contact you. You don't need a landing page. You have a way for people to contact you because you have a website already, and you have an email address. And you've got a contact us form directly on your website. So you already have that. So the question is how are you going to ask? The easy thing, to Erin's point, is a little promo on your podcast. It doesn't have 30 seconds and pick a date and go for it. And, I was there, the first group program that I put out, I had to build it as I was going. I was building the plane as I was flying it, but I knew, if I didn't just put it out there, it was not going to get done. I know this about myself too. So we are all in agreement. We are all guilty of this. All 3 of us here. And I think people listening are like, yep, me too. So the only way this gets done is to put yourself out there. So I've been like, I'm ready to kind of launch like a local group program in my community, because have had a couple of just individual clients here that have told me that other people like, I would love to work with Laura, but I'm afraid I can't afford it. Or I know I can't afford it because they've told people how much it is. But and that's when I'm like, I got to get this group program out for them. And I want to do it. And I'm like, I'll wait until January because, people over the holidays. Now I'm thinking, you know what?
We need to do it now.
During the holidays. People need to be in a program during the holidays that allows them to know, what, it's okay if you want to have the candied sweet potatoes or the pumpkin pie for the holidays. Like, the world is not going to end, but having that sort of group support and talking to people about how they navigated the holidays, and oh, you know what? I actually also ate the Brussels sprouts or the spinach or the green beans or whatever, or I had double the turkey, for protein. So that's going to be my challenge to myself, is to let's get this out before the holidays, actually, for my community. And I'm just, I have to be careful about how I promote it, because I'm, on the local Facebook page, there's one page that I can do advertising, another page I can't, but I'm, rather than sitting there like, I'm going to wait till the first of the year, I'm going to do it as a holiday launch, I think. Right. So think through a little bit about kind of where, if you're like, all right, I already have a 12-week program, I'm just going to do it with more than one person at a time. Where's the low hanging fruit where you can start that promotion to get even if it's just a handful of people the first time around.
Yeah. And definitely on the podcast, I also do some local networking. So I do 2 groups. So, and I have had clients from there. So, maybe next month is November. If I'm thinking of launching it in January, then I just say, my group course is coming up. Who wants to join? So, yeah, there's different avenues. And like Erin said, can people get what you're doing in a minute on your Instagram posts? That could be a game changer for me.
It was a complete game changer. Honestly, I was very dismayed that it was so unclear. As soon as they pulled up my Instagram feed, I was like, oh my God, no, they're not going to be able to know what I do.
I'm curious about this though. Wait, before you move on, like, so does this need to be in your feed with all of your posts, or is it in your bio? Like, people are like, oh, I wonder what she does, and it's in her bio. Like,
Either way. So the game is somebody pulls up your Instagram bio, they take a little cursory scroll, they look at your bio, they click on a few posts. Do they in 1 minute know what you do, who you help, how you work with people? And the answer was no. And also my branding is very inconsistent as well. But like, as this was happening, I was like, oh yeah, I already know this is going to be a nightmare for my partner who's going to do this. And that was like, hey, now I have, you know what I've done since then is here's one thing I've done. So when I do an Instagram reel, which I hate so much, I take 10 minutes. Now this takes a little bit of technology, but I'm sure that you can handle it. Jackie, you seem like a tech person. Ish.
Yeah. Ish.
I take 10 minutes to go into Canva. I'm still on my phone, the Canva app on my phone, create a cover image that's with my brand colors. It's not fancy. So that now my reel has a branded cover image. So now my grid looks branded. It doesn't take long. It's just one of those little steps that I skipped thinking, whatever, I got the content out there, which is good. Getting content out there is good. But it's like another 10-minute effort to have it. Now it's more clear. I have a little caption. It's better. It was just that little nudge of doing that exercise. I think that's for anybody listening. Honestly, like, Instagram's a pretty useful business tool for most people. Just how clear is it what you do and how you work with people? So what I was thinking was, so I'm going to be launching a business course in the new year where I'm taking people into launching their coaching business, which is, here's the deal. Here's the spirit behind it is like, you're going to have to do it. Okay, let's go. It's like, this is what I tell my clients. Okay. For example, I tell my clients, okay, one of the rules in my coaching practice is you got to eat breakfast, mostly protein. That's just start the day with a massive protein for breakfast. I call it the epic break fast epically. People will say, yeah, but I don't have time. Yeah, but I'm not hungry in the morning. Yeah, but I get it. It's like, if you don't, you have to feed yourself. No one's coming to do it for you. Like, let's go. It's grown up action. I know this sounds tough lovey, and I'm not a tough love person, but it's like, what do we think is going to happen if we don't do it? Like, what do we think is going to happen if we don't do these things? And so this is honestly the spirit behind this business course that I'm going to be running is like, okay, here's what you need. You need to have a product. It needs to solve a problem for a certain kind of person. Who is that? What's that product? Where do they start? What is day one of the product of the program? What's day one of your health coaching program? What's the first thing they have to do? Oh, I don't know. I guess they could do this, or I guess I could do that, or maybe it could be this. It's like, what's day one? Let's build day one. Okay, now let's build day two. And it's just all the stuff we talked about, which is like putting in these tiny little actions, maybe building the plane as you're flying it, to to Laura's metaphor earlier. But like, we just got to do it. This is the grown-up action, right? And it's not always sexy and it's not always fun, but it can also be sexy and fun, but also just has to get done.
And once you've done it once, it's right. Done. You can make some tweaks. Oh, that didn't go so well. I'll change that. But for the most part, it's done.
Yeah. That's a very good insight. So that's really good. These things are now repeatable.
Right.
So for me to launch my group program in 4 days, it's not a problem. The emails are already written. I just have to like reset it up basically. But you know what else? I think what sprung to mind when you said that, Jackie, is once you do it once, your bravery ratchets up a little bit. You're like, oh, I did that. Maybe I could do this. Oh, I did that. Maybe I could try this. And suddenly you're just throwing things at the wall just for fun. Like, I'm going to try a group program. I'm going to try a retreat. I'm going to start a podcast. Like, there's a bravery element that has to be sort of nurtured through doing and maybe failing or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. And also, once you run a group program, if you record it, you could then do an online, evergreen program that people can just join at a much lower cost. You've set up the emails, you've done everything. You don't need to do very much at all. They just come in, they watch the videos, and off they go. And there's no additional coaching. There's no additional time, or maybe there's a bit of both.
1,000,000%. Okay. I love that you brought that up, because I'm doing that with my new group program. Every single one of these I do these daily little Facebook lives. This is how I'm running my group program. Okay. It's an email that comes out every day. with some kind of educational thing, supported by a Facebook Live, which is just me talking at the camera for 15 minutes about stuff I love talking about anyway. It's not scripted, but these are recorded. To your point, now if I take all those recordings and all those emails, all that copy I've written anyway, put it into an online course, now I have a DIY metabolic reboot course that I can sell for $25.
Exactly.
It's zero work. I've already done the work.
Yeah. And by the way, your emails, you can write as you go. You do not have to have the entire email campaign written. Again, stressful. Trust me, this is the way I did it. I just woke up every morning at 6 o'clock and I wrote out the email. Found a couple typos after the fact, but no one cared. No one cared, but I was literally day by day writing it all, saving it into a Google Doc, sending it out. I did proofread it, and, Erin understands my internal emails and how many typos I commonly send out. But don't let that stop you. You have got everything you need. And the most important thing is how people can find you. And oh my gosh, you've got a fantastic platform, and I want to thank you for being willing to come on this, because what you said to me when I invited you is like, yeah, but I don't think I'm an example of this successful health coach. So first of all, I do think you are successful. You've got a podcast that's been out there for 2 years. You have a 12-week program that you've taken several people through, right? You've got a journal that you just spent time building that you can now turn around and sell. Now you're looking to switch gears and help more people by a group program. I don't know by what measure that's not successful, other than, you're not making $100,000 a year doing it right now.
Yeah.
Just right now. You've got all the component pieces you need. And by the way, so you've been at it for what, about 2 years?
So the actual coaching is, 2 years.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So what does Coach Laura always say about how long it takes to
3
go
years.
from zero? Yes.
I listen. See, I listen.
It takes 3 years to go from, hey, I'm making some money and I'm getting pretty good at this and I've got some content, to, boy, everything's gelled. Everything's gelled and I've got this. I'm full-time now. Girl, next year is going to be your year.
Okay.
Putting a date stamp on it.
Okay. Let's pivot and talk. Let's get Jackie talking again. So Jackie, this book, like, that was a surprise. I knew you had a podcast, but you're like, oh, and by the way, and you pull out this ginormous book, which is like a journal with all kinds of prompts in it for people. So talk about this book.
Yeah. So I wanted something that was a low cost entry for people to get to know me, to come in. It's really low cost. It's $14.99 in sterling, which is probably about the same in dollars now, and the way everything's going. And it doesn't give any advice specifically, but it just helps people to write down their goals, because we're very goal focused. We want people moving forward and doing their goals, but then also noticing, because I have people and they come to me and I say, do you have any health niggles? And they hardly ever write anything in there. But after I've been coaching them for a few weeks, they say, oh, by the way, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. I can get up the stairs quicker. I can do this that I couldn't do. All these things that we know about, but they're not noticing them immediately. So it's about getting people to notice what's going on and to come up with, look ahead. It's a bit like planning. So what might get in your way tomorrow if you're on your plan, whether that's fitness plan or a dietary plan. It doesn't have to be low carb. It doesn't have to be keto. It's not specific to any particular eating way. But how do you feel when you wake up? What's your affirmation for the day? What are you grateful for at the end of the day? What have been your successes? What have been your obstacles and the looking forward? So there's loads of questions there for each day, but it also each week, I've just opened it on a week actually. So what are my goals for the week? That's that breaking it down. What's your weight, your waist, your hips? What challenges do you foresee in the week? And what small and consistent tasks can I do this week? And what physical activity are you going to do? And we've created a little chart so people can just write in. Number 1 is walking. Number 2 is, for me, taekwondo. Number 3 is swimming. And then there's a place to plan out your meals, to write down any shopping list and reminders. And so it's a really comprehensive journal for people to, decide what they want to achieve in 12 weeks, and then get them noticing what's happening each day. How do you feel today? How's your energy on waking? How's your mood? How's your joints, pains in your joints? All things like that.
Man, there could be a whole course, a program around that. Like,
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So sort of like, the 12-week, whatever, we don't have to come up with a name with it now, but literally the coaching session every week, the group coaching session is like, everybody open up your workbooks. Here we go. Let's look at the week ahead. What are the barriers? What movement are you going to do? Let's brainstorm. Who wants to share? Sally, what are you going to do this week? What did you write down? Like, anybody got any, like, you could have a whole group program around that journal. And the journal's the freebie. It's like, sign up for my 12-week program, get the journal for free. It's such a cool thing. And just as a productivity nerd, I love that weekly thing, that weekly page you just showed us, because that reminds me of what my weekly coaching sessions are like with my clients. Literally, how was last week? What went well? What was not so good? Why? Okay, what's coming up this week? What barriers do you foresee? I really believe that barrier identification is one of our number one jobs as health coaches, helping them see barriers, name them, work through them. So putting that up front in a weekly page, and then having that able to sort of extrapolate that out into the 7 days of the week ahead. It's really like very slick productivity planning as far as I'm concerned. But like it's coaching. Like, this is, to me, you've got the coaching relationship in that book.
Yeah.
That could be leveraged in many ways.
Yeah. And this would work, if another coach is listening and think, oh, that would be good for my
That's right.
clients, they could still use it. It could be used for anything.
Yeah.
But it's really cool.
100%.
And there's also a habit tracker in there. There's an intermittent fasting tracker. So if somebody wants to increase their fasting, there's a little sort of, what's it called, chart. So you can chart how your intermittent fasting is going. Is it going up in your intermittent? Or if you wanted to mark your eating window, maybe you can block it in with your eating window and your intermittent fasting hours and all sorts of things. Yeah, it's really cool.
Love it. That's really cool. I mean, there's lots of ways to program around that book.
I love how goals focused and awareness focused it is. I mean, you've got the stuff in there with like pictures and tracking food, and for folks that need that and find it helpful, it's all in there. But I love the fact that it's not just that there's a lot of these sort of subjective health markers, and to Erin's point, I love the what do I think is going to challenge me this week? I used to put that in my group program all the time too, helping people kind of foresee barriers so that you can troubleshoot them ahead of time so that you're ready. It's clear that a lot of intention and thoughtfulness went into that book. But I also think it's a prime example of just how well you know your stuff to have written a book like that covers all of the little aspects of what a coaching client would need. And if you were a real go-getter, could probably coach themselves with that book and to a certain degree. So it makes great as a standalone for, $14.99 in pounds or what have you. But I agree with Erin. I think it could be an entire group course around that as well. I don't know how it would be different than your existing program, or maybe it's not. Maybe how did you tell us, walk us through how you went through the building of that book and what went into it and how you wrote it and got it published?
I am in contact with a virtual assistant who really focuses on creating these books. So I did the outline, she put it all together. We went backwards and forwards with changes because you read it and it looks fine, but then you read it again and you've made a spelling mistake, like you said, Laura. So that was a lot of backwards and forwards. She created the Kindle publishing account for me. She uploaded everything. So, together it just worked really well. She set the price. Okay, we'll go with that. That's fine. She does lots of journals. She knows what she's doing. So she's created for me a digital version, so I can sell that on my website when I get around to doing that, which will work on an iPad with the pencil, so people can write on it.
That's cool.
That's really amazing. I can't believe you did all that. That's huge. So is it one of those on-demand self-published things or do you have stacks of books somewhere? Or are they only printed when people buy them, or how does that work?
But if you buy from Amazon, they will, I don't know if they have them printed or they print them and sell them. I think they must be already printed because I ordered one for my friend, for Louise, my podcast host, because she did help me a lot with this.
Bravo.
There's something to be said too, in terms of, you better be putting on your website that you are now a published author, right? Oh my God.
I am a published author as well. Behind this screen is a load of birthing books that I wrote 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, Jackie, you got so much going on and it's all so good. You know, you're right. You're just right there and you are successful. So thank you for getting on and sharing all your successes with us. And most importantly, I hope people listening, getting a little bit of inspiration about the benefit, like just all the work you've done over the last 2 years is now setting you up for what you really want coming up. So I applaud you for putting yourself out there. That's the hardest thing for so many people. Writing great content and you know, being able to interview other people. Erin and I have found that hugely beneficial to not just us, but other people. So I just think it's a great medium. And for folks that are interested in it, you know, why not? All of that can be repurposed, by the way, in terms of just a written blog post or what have you. So wow. I mean, I just give you tremendous kudos for everything that you've done in just 2 short years.
Thank you.
I love it. Awesome. So where can people find you so they can kind of track what you're up to and check out your podcast, maybe order your book?
Yeah. So nearly everywhere am I fabulously keto. So Twitter is fabulously keto, Facebook fabulously keto, Instagram is fabulously keto 1 because somebody had beat me to it. And she doesn't even use it. And I've sent her messages saying, can I have that handle, please? LinkedIn is Jackie Fletcher. I think it's Jackie Fletcher 100. I've got a Facebook group called Fabulously Keto that anyone in the low carb, real food way of eating is welcome to join. I even have people in there that are not really low carb, but they're still in there. Website fabulouslyketo.com. That's about it.
I love it. Awesome. Well, we're excited for you. Thank you so much for.
Oh, and listen to the podcast on any podcast app. Fabulously Keto. Buy the book, The Journal on Amazon.
Perfect.
Look at you.
Throw it in there. See, you did it. Awesome. Great job. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.